John Miglosh for the WDMA and the International Society for Strategic Marketing. Last week, a friend wrote to me and he said, "You know about customer segmentation. We should help people implement the 125 cell program for RFM and help them find their best customers." I wrote him back and I said, "Oh, heavens, that is a very scary idea. There's all kinds of benefit to RFM, but there's some very big cautions." And so today I'd like to talk just a minute or two, more than a minute or two, about how RFM can kill your company. Okay, and so first the basics. Recency, frequency, monetary is about when did they last buy from you? How many times did they buy from you? How much did they spend? And it's been around forever. Even in Bob Stone's book from the 90s, he says it's been around forever. Here's Bob Stone's book. Let me toggle back to the front here. And he's got a really great method I really like. It's not the quintile method that comes from Art Hughes. Here's Art's book, and he's got a whole big section on RFM in there, and both of them are signed. They both were friends of mine. And Art argues that we should keep the cells the same size. So we're using quintiles, 5 groups. Okay, Bob's doesn't group people. Okay, and so it gives you a very continuous stream of best to worst in your customer file, and that's really an interesting way to do it. But not if you want to use modeling tools and things, because you'll have like 100 different values for your customer frequency. And so we had to kind of group it together. So Arts groups it together better. And if you don't use it, you should, because it's very, very well proven. But it can cause problems. And so we're going to talk today about why it's so important. First, recency. Well, I ran a $10 million business just on recency. We weren't that old of a company, and a few years, and so our oldest buyers maybe 4 years or 5 years or 6 or 7, for as long as I ran it. And we put out a catalog twice a year, and every now and then we'd mail all the way down to our oldest customers. Okay, because people change and stuff, and we could check and see who was still alive and who was still in business. But so you can do that. Now, other mailings, we would go back up and just mail our most recent customers. I do a little of each. Okay, but don't be enslaved to one particular cutoff. I did work for Cabela's, and I went around talking to people at sporting goods stores. In those days, they didn't have very many. And they said, we used to get the Cabela's catalog. Everybody I talked to, maybe 40 people, said, "Oh, I used to get the Cabela's catalog." But the truth was, if you didn't buy from them right away, you didn't get another one. So watch out for being enslaved to like a 12-month cutoff or a 6-month cutoff or something like that. The other thing you want to watch out for is seasonality, which can even affect business to business, and we're not going to get into that. But in Cabela's case, they would have fishermen mainly and hunters mainly, and most people weren't both. Even though they might be both, they weren't buying much of both. And what happened was that if you bought from Cabela's in the spring, they would mail you shoe catalogs and archery catalogs, and they'd work their way in camping. Then they work their way to the hunting catalogs. Now, when we pulled the fishing catalog names in late November, it was a bunch of hunters were the most recent. And so our modeling tool came up saying, nope, recency doesn't matter. And I called one of my friends, a PhD, and he said, "Oh, it's probably something wrong with your model, something wrong with your data." Okay, but it wasn't. It was because seasonality had worked. We've got totally different customer groups from one season to another, and so we were mailing inadvertently. We were mailing all the fishing buyers the hunting catalog as we came around, as they finally got in there and got pulled, and we were mailing the hunters the fishing catalog as they got in there and got pulled. So watch out for that on recency. The next thing is monetary. Bob Stone says you just take the dollar value and divide it by 10, whereas he multiplies the frequency by 4, and he multiplies the recency by 10, I believe. So, and that's a very common strategy of making recency most important because it is, and working your way down to monetary. But there's some funny things about monetary. If you slavishly follow it, you'd expect your big buyers to be really great. But what we found was in Cabela's and in Musician's Friend, and in really in a lot of different ones, is that if there was a high monetary purchase, the muzzleloader or the Gibson guitar would come in the door, and the spouse would say, "What in the world did you buy now?" And we needed a new refrigerator or wash machine or whatever. But what we found was if you let 4 or 5 years go by the time the mobile home's sold off in the divorce, you can get some really great customers coming back with a little bit of skill in modeling. The other thing we found was one of our clients was an apparel, Bullock & Jones was an apparel company, and they had some really big purchases and high response rates. But instead of using sales like Bob Stone suggests, and I think Art would agree, we also built one based on net profit. So we took the cost of goods out, we added an order processing charge, and if you returned it, you got another order processing charge, so you ended up with a negative margin. And we found thousands, tens of thousands of people that ordered a lot and returned it. And this way, we could even find them by postal code. It was great. Anyway, so some caution is in order, even with monetary. Now we're going to talk about frequency today. You're going to get to the point here, and it works with differentiates the one-time buyers with the rest of the buyers. But if you adopt Art Hughes's strategy, you end up looking like this. So you've got equal. You just divide them up, best to worst. Okay, so your best. I actually put the best on the bottom. Your best customers 20%, then 20% next down, and you're working your way to the bottom 20%. Okay, and it turns out that the best customers do 60%. Best 20% do 60% of your sales. You've heard the 80-20, where 20% does 80%. It could be true, but in this case, which is a real data set, it was only about 60%. And the bottom. And actually, the one-time buyers, the two-time buyers, and the three-time buyers are all, let me go back to the quintiles, the one-time buyers are one-time, two-time, and half the three-time quintiles all were one-time buyers. Okay, now why are they better and worse? Well, that's because to me, it was insane to give one customer a 1, and another customer a 2, and another customer a 3, who all had the same frequency. That's the way the Art Hughes methodology works out. It shows you great results, and that part's great because, over here you've got, the best customers will do great, and the worst customers will do worse, but these are all one-time buyers. So long ago, we'd said this doesn't make any sense. But the reason it makes a little sense is because I did a secondary sort. So if you had one order, I sorted you by money also, by raw sales. And that kind of works. And I would recommend that if you don't do anything better. But my friend John Worth taught me this method. And we'll go over here to the slide and show you the difference. My friend John Worth... John Worth, he said, why don't we score it by behavior? And so what John did was say, let's take 20%, let's sort the customers by sales, or in this case, by orders. Orders and sales go parallel. I'll show you that. And what we'll get is the top customers generating about 20%, then the 4s about 20%. They actually do I think they do a little less. The 3s and so on. Actually, in our methodology, we still don't break the one-time buyers into two groups. And so you can see that the one-time buyers actually do comprise about 50%. I think it's 49%. But they only generate about 15% of the sales, which is normal. Okay? And this is life to date data, okay? So it's not one mailing. This is like the whole thing. If you do a mailing to your one-time buyers, it could be a lot worse than that. But that's what it is right here. And so if we look at the worth method, we've got the number of orders, 20. We said we can only do so much with the one-time buyers. And this is not John Worth's data, but I'm sure his would work out something like this. So 75% of the customers only bought once or twice and only generate, a little 35% or something. Anyway, 45%, 35%. Anyway, it's not good. Whereas, and this is the important part. The important part is that the best customers are revealed with this methodology. Okay, so the 5-score customers, they're only 3% of the customers, but they generate 22% of the orders. Again, this is the Worth method. Okay, and the 4s get 20%. So the top less than 10% generates about 40% and a little over 40% of the. This is the same though. 41%, 42%. Don't do math on a live video. Okay, now here's the method that we use, and that is, we call it, well, I'm not going to tell you what we call it. I'm not going to tell you how we do it because it'll take too much time. But we divide the one-time buyers, the 2 and 3, and this is like below average customers, and we put them all together. Now, we also have ways of breaking that huge group of customers. So it's not the end of the world for us because we use 400 or 500 variables for an average client. So, but what we're really after is we're after these guys because many of my consumer clients, Baseball Express. So I called up Baseball Express one day and I said, hey, do you ever consider having business to business sales? Do you have any business to business? No, we are strictly consumer. I said, okay. Well, who buys this $5,000 pitching machine? Oh, well, leagues and colleges and even major league teams buy from us. I said, oh, okay. Did you ever think you might want to consider them to be business to business, and send somebody over to say hello or call them up? Nope, we're strictly consumer. Well, the reason we knew that was because we took we used this scoring method, okay, which gives the 1% their score of 5, which was 11% of your sales, 9% of your orders. The 2% get another 10%, okay? Excuse me. The 3s are 5%. So we've got only 8% of our customers, but they're generating almost 30% of the sales, okay? And this is rational, okay? And what happens is you start to see your best customers differently. And oftentimes, even if you're a consumer, you'll have a different, you should have a different marketing approach. And this is why it's so dangerous to just use whatever scoring method you think makes some sense. So in conclusion here, let's get the page down. RFM is great, but it masks the best customers, especially the best customers. If you pack 60% of your sales into one number, that's pretty nearly insane, wouldn't you say? And that's what Art Hughes' method will do. It'll do that. Now, Bob's won't do that, so it depends. But that's the quintile method is the number one way that most people do it, okay? And so it also masks the worst because it gives 3 numbers to the one-time buyers, and there's some better ones in there and some worse ones. If somebody just bought from you 6-8 months ago, they might be down the recency. Most consumer mailers only look at the last 24 months, and that's what Bob Stones recommends. But those muzzle loaders and guitar buyers, they will buy from you, and they will perform at a level of your hotline if you have the right monetary scoring. So they mask the best, they mask the worst. And if you don't think this is serious, we had a client that had their scoring mixed up on their computer, and they actually mailed the lowest RFM scores, and they had the real bad one, but they mailed their lowest RFM scores for 3 months in a row, and it almost put them out of business. Okay, so these things matter. These can put you out of business if you know. Dick Cabela said the fact that we figured out why their number one complaint was, why do you send me all these fishing catalogs? Or why do you send me all these hunting catalogs? Is because of the way they applied RFM. See that? And their product, they say, well, add product to it. Their product was equally mixed. Now, this was 20 years ago or maybe 25 years ago. So, I'm not saying that they do it now. I don't know what they're doing now. But I'm just telling you, we walked into a big mailer, and their scoring methods were terrible. And I know a lot of catalogers today, and probably even more e-commerce companies are not doing even the basics of RFM, much less these nuances that you need to keep in mind, or you can put yourself out of business. Hope you enjoyed the scoring lesson. I'm John Miglosh for the WDMA and the International Society for Strategic Marketing.